evening and welcome to the Black Robe podcast. I'm Carol Mitchell, thrilled to be part of the second in a series of podcasts that we are doing in anticipation of the 2022 Freedom Summer Symposium. By now, you should know that the IBJ will be on site at Pacific Lutheran University, May 19th and May 20th. And one of the featured elements of this year's symposium is the legacy builder interviews that we are doing with people who were part of the May 11th, 1969 Mother's Day Uprising. And so we're thrilled tonight to have Andre Jimenez and Keysha-Rae Cooper back as our young adult ACES Leadership Program young adults who are interviewing none other than James L. Walton himself. And so we're excited about this interview and about the series and hope that you will join us for the rest of the series. I'm Carol Mitchell. Enjoy the show.
Thank you, Carol, for kicking us off on the second episode of this three-part series discussing the Mother's Day Uprising of 1969, right here on the Black Robe podcast. Last week, Andre and I had the honor of speaking with Senator Rosa Franklin and Dr. Bill Barsma. If you haven't listened to that episode already, I definitely suggest that you go and check it out. Tonight, we are very excited to hear from Mr. Jim Walton, who was Tacoma's first Black city manager. We appreciate you for sharing this space with us this evening and are eager to hear from you about the events and overall climate in Tacoma in 1969. Okay, enough of me talking. Let's get right on into it. So, Mr. Walton, tell us about yourself, your background regarding change for the Black community, and how you came to be in Tacoma, Washington in 1969.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to chat with you and your viewers about May of 1969. I appreciate the opportunity. I am a native of Texas, and I have ended up here primarily because of my military service that placed me at Fort Lewis, Washington. It was called then, as a part of the buildup for the Vietnam War. I was called back in service and sent to the state of Washington. That is how I ended up here, and fell in love with the area, and maybe more importantly, the people. Something was special about the people here, especially the African Americans. And maybe it was because almost all of the African Americans then was from somewhere else. And it was a very enriching kind of experience because we were brought together because we shared that in common. And so it was easy to bond with the few African Americans who were here then. And so it was a very inviting, comforting area for me. And I think it reminded me very much of the small town that I grew up in, because people looked after each other, shared and cared and prayed and all of that kind of stuff. And so Tacoma was small enough and big enough for me to have a place where I could be involved and hopefully make a contribution to the community. And so I decided to stay put where I was placed, and I became involved in the community, going to Tacoma Community College. I think I was about 30 years of age during that period of time. So I had an awful lot of work to do, because then I had a full-time job and a very active life to include going to school. And so that was my focus when I came here. And all of that changed for me because of my involvement at Tacoma Community College, starting the Black Student Union, which was called the OB Society there. It wasn't any grand plan or scheme on my part. It was just an opportunity that came my way to assume a leadership position there on campus, and it opened up a number of other avenues to be of service to the community. And as they would say, the rest is history. I have been blessed to have a very strong community connection ever since I've been here. I've been blessed to make some really good friends with people who were had pretty much the same agenda and the idea that to try and make things better for African Americans here in the Northwest. I was able to find a very supportive church community. Like I said, I had a community of involvements, and so I've just been blessed. I've had good jobs that didn't pay that much, but they allowed me to try and make a difference in working with people across racial lines and economic strata and all of that. So it has been a glorious life for me here in the Northwest. I'm just blessed.
Thank you, Mr. Walton, for sharing your early history. And as a graduate of Tacoma Community College, I just want to say how thankful I am for paving the path for students that look like us to be successful in those environments. But we've really been focusing the last couple weeks on the May 11th uprising, or the Mother's Day uprising. And we know that you were in Tacoma during that time. So can you paint a picture for us about the events that led up to the uprising itself, and then what happened afterwards?
Well, as best I recall, of course, it was Mother's Day in 1969, which was a peaceful day in celebration of mothers. And I was living in the Hilltop area on J Street, and there was an arrest that was made on L Street, as I recall, which was a couple of blocks away from where I was living at the time. A police arrest pulled over a car to arrest a Black male on a warrant, outstanding warrant for some previous activity. And that encounter, as has happened many times in the past, got out of hand. There was people coming out of their houses, confronting the police about the treatment of this African-American male, and things kind of exploded. And K Street was the kind of the business hub for the Hilltop at that time, and I lived in that area. I had been heavily involved at Tacoma Community College, as I talked about, and I had recently made contact with the Tacoma Urban League under the leadership of Thomas Dixon, and had met most of the Black ministers in and around the Hilltop area. And so in response to the community uprising over the handling of this young man, more police officers, of course, came to the area and to assist in making the arrest. And when nightfall happened on May 11, then other kinds of disturbances took place. I'm hesitant to refer to that as a riot. For me, it was a disturbance that led to a riot. Because when we use the term riot, it seems to place the blame on the people in in the community, as opposed to focusing on what was the triggering point. And in so many cases throughout urban America, what triggers these riots and disturbances, reaction to something else. You feel like you've been put up on or disrespected, and et cetera. And that kind of understanding gets lost in it. And the community, then the Black community, gets painted as if we're a violent people that can't manage our emotions and our behavior. It was how that Black man was being treated is what caused all that. And so it ended up with a police officer getting shot, and there was some other destruction. But what led from that then was a concerted effort on a part of people in the community, and I was able to be a part of that, to try and get the city of Tacoma, the leadership under Mayor Rasmussen at that time, to improve the conditions that was confronting the Hilltop community, where the largest collection of African Americans resided at that time. And so it really started from there, and led to a number of other things that were going on. So it went from a very peaceful, respectful day to one of disturbance and confrontation between the African American community and the people that were commissioned to serve us.
Thank you, Mr. Walton. What do you believe were the issues in dispute at that time?
Well, the issues at that time are issues that still confronts us at this time. It was poverty, separation and segregation, no economic base, poor education. Is just the things that were happening to African American communities for the most part across this country because of the history of this country. And we had a long way to go then, and we have a long way to go now. And so those issues are still in various degrees the issues that still hampers us and our ability to grow to meet our potential.
And who were the influential leaders in Tacoma during that time, and what approach did they take to affecting that change? So you talked about Mayor Rasmussen and the formal government, but who were the leaders like yourself and others who really rose up during this time to create the change that the community needed?
Right. During that time, the leadership for the African American community was a very traditional source of leadership. It was the various ministers in town of some of the major churches, the late Reverend E.S. Brazil, Reverend Joseph Bowles, and Reverend Mitchell, and Reverend Westbrook were pillars of the African American community because we were greatly influenced by the ministers in our community. And then the traditional African American organizations, the Urban League, and Thomas Dixon was the head of that, very influential, and he was impactful. And Harold Moss, who ended up being the first African American elected to public office here in Tacoma, was a mover and a shaker, and the people who headed up the NAACP at that time. So it was a very traditional kind of organization. The other organization of movers and shakers that was not so visibly involved was the whole network of Black women organization associated with the City Association of Colored Women's Club. There was a number of those organizations, and they were very influential and impactful, but not nearly as visible, but nevertheless, they were players.
In your opinion, how receptive do you think those who were in power were taking the demands of the Black community? I mean, were they receptive to what was going on? What did that look like?
Oh, no, they were not receptive at all. And always thought that we were, quote, out of our place by even trying to galvanize the community around a set of demands that we wanted from the city to improve services, to integrate police and fire departments, improve their hiring practices, et cetera. So to do that was a real affront into that we were really, quote, out of our place to behave in such a manner. And so that was part of the problem, and it's part of what led to, I think it was 5 of the council members being recalled, which opened up an opportunity for Harold Marsh to be appointed to the city council. So it was very confrontational. There's no question about it. In a kind of confrontation that is you don't see much anymore because we had absolutely no political power. We had no real social power. We had no economic power. But what we had was a commitment to making things better for the people in this city. And I think it was necessary for that climate for people to stay engaged and get out of their comfort zone to confront the establishment, because many of the established leaders that I talked about, they were reliant on the establishment community, government as well as non-government, for resources and opportunities to have jobs and things of that nature. So it was quite a commitment, especially from the ministers, to stand up and be counted and take the risk that the outcome may not be what we envisioned. But we were together, and we were committed to move ahead together, or we were going to stay in bondage together. But we were together.
Thank you. And you touched on this in a couple of your previous responses, but what did the Hilltop community want from City Hall that they weren't getting? And you mentioned it leading to the recall of several council members and the installation of a new team. So what was at the heart of them taking that drastic of a change?
Well, I think when you look back on these periods of what we call change and et cetera, and what is it that the Black folks, what is it that they want? Well, we wanted the same as everybody else. One of the most difficult things for us to do coming out of the Mother's Day riot and disturbance, and people were upset, is to have people to have a long-term vision of what we were all about. We were not coming together just to be destructive. We were a force for change for the better. And so you have to have discipline, you have to have the long-term vision to make that happen, because anything is worthwhile. It does not happen overnight. It doesn't come easy. We had to take the high road and be committed. So what we wanted was the same as what everybody else in Tacoma wanted, and that was better services, better treatment. We wanted our government that we were paying taxes for to be open to us the same as it was open to the people who were in a power position. We realized later on that people don't just give up power because you request it. Power they're willing to fight for. And if you want to be in a power sharing arrangement, you have to be prepared to fight as well. And so we were different in our coloration, but we were no different from every other citizen in every other city in America. It just was denied us, and we would have no more of that.
Thank you. Thinking about everything that you've shared with us today, what's something you learned from your experience that young leaders like us need to know in order to help bring about the change we are trying to see in the world?
Well, I would say, I think the younger generation, as Carol has said before, you're our hope for the future. There are people who embraced me when I was supposed to be the young person. They didn't exclude me. They took me in and let me learn from them by being close to them, and et cetera. And I would like to think that I also, and others in my group, was able to impart to them our new ideas about doing things. We wanted the same thing. We might have different ways of going about it, and different ways to approach some of these things. There's no reason to come apart because we all wanted the same thing. And so what I would say to young people is stay engaged, understand that your generation will see things differently than the other, but we're in this together. It's just no way that we can move forward in progress, continue to progress, if we're shattered. So first of all, stay engaged, share your new knowledge and your experience alongside other people. You can learn and you can be a teacher at the same time. And don't let the fact that you might be, quote, young, interfere with that. You're part of this community, and we need your expertise, your energy, your new ideas, because and it was a difficult thing for people in leadership position. Again, people may not voluntarily just step aside, but stay engaged anyway, because the change will come. None of us are going to live forever. We don't have all the ideas, but we need each and every one of us to be engaged. So learn all you can, share all you can, but be a part of the solution. And I would say, maybe it was early on that maybe Keysha, you might have said, or it might have been implied, that you might want to move faster or quicker than the situation might warrant it. Keep that drive, but don't give up. Just keep leaning into the wind. And when you least expect it, you will have your breakthroughs. You will have your breakthroughs, but I guarantee you will not if you give up. So so keep leaning into the wind and know that you're making progress, even though you may not feel that way. As they teach us in the church, sometimes the darkest hour is just before dawn. And so if you give up before dawn, you miss your opportunity to face the sunlight.
Amen. All righty. So what are some changes that you'd like to see in the next generation or our generation of leaders? You spoke about what the Black community was wanting back in the late 60s. And, a lot of us are still striving for those same ideals: social power, economic power, equality. So what do you want to see in us to bring about that change?
I think the big area for breakthrough for the new generation of people like yourself is we need to be players in the economy. We need to have our own jobs, our own businesses, and et cetera. And that is where we are still way short. Just going to school to be an employee for somebody else, we need to have a larger vision than that. And so the economy and having an economy is the big unfinished piece of all of the civil rights efforts and et cetera, et cetera. I can't think of any major breakthroughs in this country and et cetera that didn't require some money. So we have to move from trying to convince someone else to invest in our dreams and our ideas to make our own investments so that we can move our community in the direction that we envision. So the economy would be first. Next to that would be, and we made quite a few breakthroughs, but we need to keep going, and that's in education. You can't ever overlook education and preparation because the world is changing. You have to have a first-rate education, even if we think the system is not structured to produce that. We have to demand that from the system we have in place. So the economy, the education, and then lastly, if that's appropriate, but they all fit in together, our families, our community. We need to strengthen the first institution that we're all exposed to, and that's your family. And then it works out from there. Many of the destructive and negative things that we may be engaged in, I think is best resolved by the family, an engaged family with a set of values and expectations to better prepare our young people to not to get picked off on your way to the victory party. We shouldn't let our behaviors and our frustrations get us on the sideline as opposed to mainstream. So the economy, the education, and our families would be what I would encourage people in your generation to put emphasis on.
Thank you, Mr. Walton. That was a word. Ooh, that hit deep. Everything you said, that was right on point. Especially the economic piece, because I feel like we have got to do a better job of investing in ourselves and not expecting the white man to hold that power and do that for us. So I really appreciate what you said there. Last question for you. What's something you tell a young individual that doesn't know where to start to be a part of change?
Be a part of what?
To be a part of the change, where to start?
Of the change, where would they start? Well, I would, for those young people that is blessed with a good family structure, whatever it is, I don't care what it is, if it's strong and it's nurturing and et cetera, that's where you start to listen to and build on the adult people in your life. Whatever title you put on them, they have experience, they have knowledge that you can benefit from. And if we are to have generational wealth, and I don't mean just money, but it's knowledge, it's everything else, then we have to be able to pass it on from one generation to the next. And so that's what I would say, because I grew up in a non-traditional kind of family structure. No sociologist, no one would ever recommend that my family structure would be what it was. But it was strong where it needed to be. my mother, my grandmother, my sisters, my uncles, they shared and they instilled in my brothers and sisters those things that were necessary and essential that has always served me well. I don't know how I missed recognizing how smart my mother and my grandmother were until I had to live in the real world. And I all of a sudden realized I was raised by geniuses. But it was instilled in me all that I needed. By the time I left Mineola, I had everything that I needed. It was a matter of application and discipline. But I came from a good place and came from people who cared about me, and it has served me well to this day.
Thank you so much, Mr. Walton. Talking about listening, we started that tonight here with you, talking about how we need to invest in our economic power, invest in our education, and invest in our families. And now I think it's on us to, put in the application and the dedication and commitment to start doing that. So we just want to thank you so much for having this conversation with us, for holding space and imparting your wisdom to the next generation. This is the second episode in a 3-part series focusing on the May 11th uprisings, the Mother's Day uprisings that led to several changes in Tacoma. And so we are trying to learn all the lessons that we can and take that into our work moving forward. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Black Robe podcast, and we hope that you'll be back soon to hear part 3, where we will wrap this up and get ready for our Freedom Summer Symposium that's happening May 19th and 20th. Thank you for listening.